we've all met the hypocritical, holier-than-thou person, right? There is some irony in that statement. But we may have even said that they were very pharisaical. They were just like a Pharisee. My goodness. Again, there's irony in this statement. But I want to tell a story first. This story is about a young preacher who was in Joplin, in that area, preaching at a church about 20, 30 years ago. He was young. He was in college, and he had been at this church for the last year and a half, investing into them, showing them the message of grace, God's truth, and growing with them. Deep down, though, he really wanted to be able to invite his mother to one of the sermons. I mean, why not, right? She might be proud of me, so I want to invite her. Okay, that's not actually his story. But he did want to invite his mother. That was a big challenge. Because, yes, indeed, she did not live as the normal Christian would. She didn't live anything like the Christian lifestyle. In fact, she was lesbian. Man, this puts this young preacher in a really big bind, but he went ahead and invited his mom. He got to church that Sunday, and, well, the rest of the congregation knew who this was. About 2-3 people quickly came up and shook hands with her and quickly scampered back to their pews. She sat down, and the thing went on, and, off singing, and nobody could keep a tone, and all this stuff, and then the sermon happened, and all that, and they went home, and there was a decent conversation afterwards, some laughing about the singing, and whatever else. Didn't think too much about it, until this young preacher went back to church that next Sunday. That next Sunday, he was met with he was met by 2 elders standing at the door waiting for him. They had said, can we talk to you in the back room real quick? Yes. So he went. And as they pulled him aside, this is what they said. If you ever want to preach at this church, don't you ever bring anyone else like that again. He said, I won't ever forget those words. I was definitely in shock. I'd spent a whole year and a half with them, investing in them, growing with them, trying to help these people understand how the gospel is for everyone. And now they didn't want somebody who was as far away from Jesus to attend their church. In fact, he was a little shocked too, and he said, excuse me? Oops, maybe not the best thing to say at the time. But the elder continued to say, we are not a church that accepts those kinds of people. The leader said back to him. After a little bit while, this young preacher continued to study Jesus, and he looked and he decided that I never wanted to preach at a church like that again. He didn't want to be at a church that had the upright, righteous people. But interestingly, he saw that the church that Jesus had really focused with was the church that sinners were welcomed and could belong to, which includes us. Because, honestly, thank goodness that sinners are welcome to church. Because I'm one of them. I've been the sinner. I've also been the Pharisee. Ironically, I've also been the sinner while being the Pharisee. I've played 3 roles. What I'm saying is, yes, I've been humbled by my sinful actions. I've been there. I've also been proud of my knowledge. And I've also compared and judged myself to the person next to me because, well, apparently they missed the message. But I was reminded of a story that Jesus did share. It's in Luke 18. And that's what we're going to look at real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and read the story. So Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 9 through 14. It helps tell us who Jesus was talking to. I think Jesus may have seen some of the hypocrisy going on. In verse 9 it says, Jesus told this parable to some who, well, they trusted in themselves that they were righteous. They believed that they were righteous people. And, well, these same people treated others with contempt. The story goes, 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and, well, there was another one, he was a tax collector. See, the Pharisee, he was standing nice and proud, tall. He stood and prayed thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even, well, like this tax collector over here. Man, oh man. You know, God, I even fast twice a week, and I give tithes of all that I get. Not just the money that I get, but even all the possessions I get. I mean, God, I tithe. Okay? But the tax collector, standing far off, hard to even get close to being maybe in the presence of God, would not even lift his eyes up to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. That's the end of the story. But Jesus tells the end of the story by saying, I tell you that this man, this tax collector, went down to his house justified rather than the other. What? For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. I don't know how we need to picture, how else we need to picture this, but this was a complete shock to everybody listening. I mean, the Pharisee was, I'm not saying that preachers are necessarily Pharisees, but I'm just trying to create a picture for us. I don't know which preacher you look up to, but he's done everything right that you've seen him ever do. He's always served everybody you can ever think of. He has always been to church every single time the doors were open. He was there serving anybody and everybody. I mean, in our mind, he was the righteous guy. But then whenever he came up to pray on Sundays, he says, God, I'm so glad that the hours I've been able to provide for you, God, I'm so glad of the time and hard work that I put. Did you see all those people I talked to this week? I invested into them. I was doing pretty good, God. I haven't been drunk in a long time. You know, that was back when I was like 15, right? I'm so glad I'm not like them anymore. You know what? He wasn't even standing this close. He probably didn't even walk through the door. Just the part of coming to the church building was hard enough. But if he was through that door and maybe came to the lobby and heard that, I don't know if I want to be there. But I know that as a sinner coming to God, I don't know if that was even the reflection of God that I wanted. I didn't reflect God, but I was still too afraid to even come before God in fear of rejection. Now, this story, okay, that's the story that was coming at. Jesus said, no, it wasn't this preacher. No, the guy who went home justified was that man back there, asking for mercy from God. And everybody's like, what? What are you talking about, God? Yeah, that's what Jesus was saying. It was a shock to them. But I've heard the moral of this story sometimes being, don't be like the Pharisee. Right? Just don't be like the Pharisee in this story. That's the moral of the story. And then I was like, that's really ironic. Now I'm the one saying, at least I'm not like the Pharisee. I just did the same thing. At least, God, I'm not acting like a Pharisee. At least, God, I'm not acting like the Christian hypocrite. God, at least I'm not that legalistic. God, at least I'm not like that denomination. God, at least I don't believe those kind of things. God, at least I keep my mouth shut. Even though, ironically, he wants us to be able to speak to him, come to him, and share with him. He doesn't necessarily want us to keep our mouth shut when we come to him. But sure, maybe you're being challenged to ask, who have you treated like a tax collector? Who have you said, at least I'm not like them? At least I'm not lesbian. At least I'm not gay. At least I'm not a porn addict. At least I'm not intoxicated. At least I'm not a crude jokester. At least I'm not divorced. At least I'm not angry. At least I'm not depressed. At least I'm not raising my kids that way. Whew. Oh man, there's a lot of people I've kind of treated as if they were the tax collector. Who might be that tax collector right next to you? Because again, I think a possible moral to this story is that you and I have messed up. Rather than leaving with, don't be like the Pharisee, I wonder if we would leave with the heart of the tax collector. Even in his brokenness, he wanted God and went to him, not with privilege, like the Pharisee thought he was coming with, but with humility. And again, I've said it, but I'll continue to say the point over and over again until it comes to hitting you too. The thing is, I've been the sinner. I've been the tax collector. I've been beaten down, ashamed to come before God, unable to even look up or to even open up my eyes because I've cautiously wanted to be in his presence, but I was ashamed. I was beaten. But maybe I did come to repentance with God. But then the next thing is I was afraid to speak up at church. I was afraid of being not just rejected by God, but now I was afraid of being rejected by the church. That's a scary place, and it's a really confusing place. You know, we can't grow when we're afraid of being rejected. Instead, we just put on a mask to hide things up. You know? It's easier that way. And as I continue to look in the scriptures, I think of what would it be like to see a church that continued to welcome all the sinners. Because we're included in that. We are. We're not too high up like the Pharisee over here. We can meet with the tax collector. Because we've been there. We should be able to speak up. Because then we can bring that sin into the light, which is where healing takes place. We can work together. Because healing takes place in the light. Now again, as I said, I've been the sinner. Other times I've been the Pharisee. I think we get the point on the Pharisee, but I'll still say it. Man, I'm glad that I haven't done that sin for a while. I've done that. I'm really glad that I haven't done that for quite a while. I've never done that. But start sounding like the Pharisee again. I missed the point. Here's my dirty laundry Pharisee moment. Just one. There has been some weeks that I leave here frustrated. I've been in the Pharisee's shoes before because I said, I can't believe that person said something so legalistic. I've left frustrated saying, I think they missed the gospel. Wow. Very pharisaical of me. I know better than they know. Well, yeah, right. We're working on this together. But I have. I've done that. I've been the Pharisee. I've been the sinner, and I've been the Pharisee, and I've been the sinner while being the Pharisee. We need a place of honesty. It's why I've continued to open up to you guys, slowly. But honestly, I'm scared sometimes. I'm really scared. I've been in the church my entire life. I share some things with people closest to me. But it's interesting. We need a place of honesty. And again, I'm telling you, I'm not perfect. I'm not. I really want to be. But in fact, I'm that sinner being the Pharisee sometimes. But, I don't know, maybe that's just me. Am I alone in that? No. I mean, you've definitely probably found yourself in these same situations. I think we can humbly come together and say that we found ourselves in these similar situations, like the Pharisee, comparing our condition to somebody else. But see, the Pharisee is at the end of the story. You may have found yourself like the tax collector. I have. And I really do wonder, how might things change if we had the heart of the tax collector? How might life change if we had the heart of the tax collector? One of humility, dependent upon God's mercy every day. I mean, this story was very unexpected. When everybody was listening to Jesus tell this story, it was a very unexpected ending, because the result of the tax collector was that he received God's gift of righteousness and was pronounced justified. That sinner? Yeah, it was very unexpected. A major shock to everybody who heard. It reminded me that God is the place for messy people to come. That's me. I'm messy. I'm confusing. I'm not perfect. And that might be you too. It might be. But again, that's why I'm challenging us. Are we accepting messy people as well? How about I say a different word? Are we welcoming other messy people? I think that's probably a better word. Are we welcoming other messy people just like me? Because I hope we're not trying to be perfectly cleaned up before we come in God's presence. It doesn't work that way. But ironically, that's what the Pharisee thought. Thought he'd been faithfully cleaned up. But the person who was welcomed was the one with humility. Now, yes, there is a caveat here that I want to throw in, which is what is so interesting about getting to follow Jesus, about getting to follow God, is that we are still called to be holy as God is holy. Right? Man, that is so hard. But you know who gets there? The tax collector with humility. It's not by the self-righteous. It's by God's grace and mercy working in us as we grow. As we welcome other messy people, just like me, just like you. So, I think we get the point. The point is, I've been the sinner, I've been the Pharisee, and I've been the sinner while being the Pharisee. I need the humility to receive God's mercy. And you need the humility to receive God's mercy too. You've been in the sinner's shoes. You've also stood like the Pharisee, proud of self-righteousness. But God is looking for the messy, humbled heart, honestly coming to God. So as a church, this is our challenge, that we continue to grow. I think it would be a very healthy family if we can have the heart of the tax collector. The one that comes together, united, humbly, in God's presence. So that's my question. Can we humbly receive messy people the way God has received, well, our messy lives? Can we humbly receive messy people the way God has received our messy lives? Because receiving messy people starts with having a messy tax collector's humility. I think that's the point that this comes to. Let's pray. God, I really don't understand. how we get to share your good news, your perfect holiness, even while I have found myself to be the sinner. Even while I've found myself to be the Pharisee. Even while I realized that I was the sinner being the Pharisee. And yet we still get to proclaim your good word. God, I'm a poor substitute for that. It truly is you who we proclaim. It truly is your goodness that we share with others. It truly is your love that we give to others. It truly is your grace and mercy that we give to others. The same grace and mercy you've given to each of us. God, I'm also praying for the person that's sitting here or who's watching this. I pray that if they've been struggling as being like the sinner, the tax collector, that they may know your mercy. That they may know your love and grace that you have already given to them, as you have given to each of us. Because honestly, when we think about it, I don't understand it. I lose my words for it. But it's more profound than I could ever live up to. We proclaim you, God. We want to see you work. We want to see you continue to work. We want to continue to see hearts and lives changed, and not just changed, but hearts and lives that want to follow you, that want to know you through Jesus. If that person needs to come talk to any of us, please give them the courage to. May we be challenged as a church to be the church that welcomes all messy people, just like me, just like us. May we be a church that is on mission to continue to proclaim your good news to the world that the gospel is called to be given to. We say this to your Son's holy, precious, love-giving name, Jesus Christ. Amen.